Hi, I'm Andy Lazris. I'm a primary care doctor and a runner in the state of Maryland, and I wanted to talk to you a little about healthcare. We've all been hearing about how terrible our healthcare system is, how much it has to be changed, how expensive it is, and yet taxpayers are paying a ton of money for our healthcare system. Patients are paying a ton of money for the healthcare system. The premiums are going up and the outcomes are getting worse, and the politicians are sitting around having no idea why. But I've been a primary care doctor for 25 years. I get it. I've seen what's going on. I've seen that my older patients are flooded with tests and medicines they don't need. They're thrown in the hospital when they want to stay home, when we know the outcomes will be better. We know as doctors what the solution is, and I wanted to share that with you. I want to give you some examples of why our healthcare system is not working and what could be done to fix it. But more importantly, I want to give you examples of how you can help your own healthcare, how you could be the best patient you could be, what tests are right and wrong for you. So that's what we're going to be talking about for the next little while. I became a doctor for all the right reasons. When I was a kid, I watched some really smart doctors save my father's life, and that was impressive. I also saw doctors down in Florida do a number on my grandparents, which wasn't so impressive. So I kind of knew what was good and bad about medicine. And when I went to college, I decided I want to be a primary care doctor. I just want to be a regular doctor. I remember going on an interview at Columbia University, and that's the place that saved my father's life, actually. And I told the doctor what I wanted to do. I was all excited, and the guy looked at me and said, "Primary care doctor?" He said, "You don't have to come to a place like Columbia to be a primary care doctor. You can go to a lesser institution." And we kind of got into it about that, and I thought I won the argument, but when I went back to college 3 days later, I found my rejection letter. I kind of saw who has the power in medicine at that point. I mean, isn't it crazy? Primary care doctors actually have to deal with the entire patient, with the whole body, with every organ system. And not only that, in areas of the country with the most primary care doctors, costs are less by a lot, outcomes are better, patients are more satisfied. So here's the thing. If you have a society just filled with specialists, and believe me, that's what we're creating now because no sane medical student's going into primary care these days. A society filled with specialists, you have more procedures, you have more tests, you have more drugs. That's what's been shown. And I'll give you an example of that. A cardiologist to put in a stent in an artery will earn $2,000 just to put in that stent. The cost to the system of that stent is about $35,000. Now there's a lot of evidence that we'll talk all about in these upcoming talks that in most cases stents just don't work. They actually can cause more harm. So what is $35,000? That's about 300 visits from your primary care doctor. So that's kind of where the numbers are. Would you rather get a stent put in that may not work or get 300 visits from doctors like me? That's the question. So here's the thing. So big deal. One stent can give you several hundred visits from the primary care doctor. How does that help you? Maybe, what's the good of a primary care doctor visit? But here's the thing. The guy who puts in the stent that's costing the system so much money, he's not necessarily going to give you accurate information. So he wants to put in the stent. And that's me being cynical. But our whole healthcare system, the trillions of dollars of waste, is based on the fact that there are people who are incentivized to do all this stuff, give you all these pills. The information's not out there. And at least when you go to see your primary care doctor, you can sit down and talk about whether these things will help you. What's good for you? Is that test good for you? Is that drug good for you? What other ways can you stay healthy? That's what primary care is all about. That's what we're going to be doing in this podcast, is telling you that stuff. But we need primary care also. We need your doctor to be able to sit down and talk to you about this so you know what's going on. I mean, our system's filled with perverse incentives like that, where the system's paying for all sorts of stuff of low value and not paying for stuff of high value. And the politicians kind of sit there in Washington saying, what's wrong with our system? But I see it every day because I see what's going on. When I first started in medicine in my first job, we actually owned the lab that we were using. And my boss told me, he said, order more labs on people because then we're going to make more money. Then the patients will be happy. You can get them out of the room quicker. And that's kind of the thinking. It did not sit well with me. And soon after that, I was taking care of an elderly woman. And that's what I do. I take care of a lot of older people mostly. And she had some heart problems, but we were managing it, and she was having a happy life. But her son felt we should do more, so we sent her to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist said we can fix the problem. And this woman went to the hospital to get the problem fixed, and she never left the hospital. 2 or 3 weeks of misery, of tests, of procedures, of things gone wrong, led to this woman's ultimate death at the cost of well over $100,000 to Medicare. And at the end of it, the son said, well, at least we gave it the best shot. And that's kind of the way the thinking is now. We're spending all this money doing things that are wrong, wondering where all the money's going to, and everyone who's involved in it is saying, well, at least we're being aggressive, at least we're being thorough. That's the problem we're having. So on my runs, we're going to be talking about a lot of the crazy incentives that push people and doctors to do the wrong thing. And we're going to talk about what patients should be looking for when they see a doctor. We're going to see what, when you go to your doctor and the doctor tells you to do this or that, or you look at a drug ad and it says to do this or that, what should you do to actually make sure you're doing the right thing? We're going to talk about a lot of problems that way. Because now Medicare and a lot of other insurances are grading doctors for us to do the wrong things. The incentives are all in the wrong place. We're going to talk about how that's happening and why the system is actually turning into a big cookie cutter machine where every patient is treated the same. Every patient has to have the same tests. Every patient has to get their cholesterol tested and treated, be on statins, have their blood pressure below a certain point, get certain tests. It becomes that the patients lost their individuality. So what you're seeing is a bunch of doctors sitting in front of a computer just typing and not actually taking care of you. And we're going to talk about why that's wrong and how we can change it. Because the only way we're going to change the system is if we do it together and if the patients are the ones who are actually pushing the change. So we're going to empower you that way. I've been around long enough to get it. I run my own practice. I've been living in the shadow of Medicare for a long time. I live and breathe its fumes. I see what's going on. So for the next few weeks, once a week, we're going to be going on a run. Sometimes I'll run by myself, sometimes with my friends. I'm going to show you some of the nicest places in Maryland that I run through. And at that time, we're going to talk about healthcare. We're going to talk about how you can improve your healthcare, what questions you should be asking your doctors, what things work and what things don't work, and why our healthcare system is so easy to fix without letting the politicians mess it up. We'll figure it out, and that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm looking forward to it.